Ryoko, you keep your on. I'm gonna hide mine so that you guys are featured.
Okay. Okay, so I think we're gonna get started. Thank you everyone for coming to IHEA seminar today, webinar today. It is my pleasure to welcome today's speaker, Dr. Justice Nonvignon. So Dr. Justice Nonvignon is an associate professor of health economics and policy at the School of Public Health, University of Ghana, and co-chair of Ghana Ministry of Health Technical Working Group on health technology assessments, under which this work he's presenting today was undertaken. Justice is also acting head of health economics unit at the Africa Center for Disease Control and Prevention, Africa CDC. So today, we're gonna have about 40 minutes for Justice to present. And after that, we're gonna open up for Q&A. For Q&A, the audience, you can raise hands and then I'll ask each one of you to ask questions one by one. So Justice, welcome, and please, you can start your presentation anytime you're ready.
Okay, is my presentation clear in presentation mode?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you to all the groups that have worked tirelessly to make this webinar series a success. So today my presentation would focus on the COVID-19 costing exercise. Reporting the findings of that exercise for Ghana. Let me start by acknowledging that this work I present is not, it doesn't come from work that I did alone, but it's the effort of many, many people and organizations in Ghana, particularly at the Ministry of Health Ghana, the Ministry of Health Technical Working Group on HTA, which I co-chair, but also the Secretariat of the HTA, and then the steering group chaired by the Minister for Health Ghana. The other organizations are listed there. And I also want to acknowledge that the meetings that produced this work actually were funded by the Ministry of Health Ghana. So it's important to acknowledge this. So this is how I intend to proceed with the presentation. First, what was the policy question? And then how did we go about undertaking this work? What did we find? What are the key lessons from Ghana? So I have permission of this person to show this WhatsApp chat. Essentially, it's a WhatsApp group of the HTA, core members of the HTA Technical Working Group. And on January 21, 2021, at about 11 a.m. GMT, I saw this message. Immediate action, HTA committee to work on value for money of COVID-19 vaccine. Treat as urgent, please. By Sunday, we need reports. In any case, this message came on a Thursday, so Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 3 days. Include non-COVAX vaccines, include COVAX facilities. Justice, treat as urgent, urgent. So you see what the emphasis is on. Our jobs are on the line. So this message came from someone that many of you on this call may know, Martha Jansarutrot, who happens to be the Director of Technical Coordination of the Ministry of Health Ghana. And I assume that when she was typing this message from the conversation, she was probably with the Minister for Health and has marching orders to quickly move on something. Of course, we could not produce anything by Sunday, but at least we did produce something over time. So how does HTA, Health Technology Assessment Infrastructure, work in Ghana? The HTA in Ghana has gone through many years, and has culminated in the establishment of clear structures within the Ministry of Health, which was inaugurated. These structures were inaugurated by the Minister for Health in 2019. You can see on the upper panel left. And the structures include a steering committee, which is chaired by the minister or his rep, and has many agencies, donor, reps, civil society, and other academia, and all others on that. Then there is the technical working group, which actually undertakes every technical analysis. So the steering committee commissions work, topic selection, they approve, and then they commission work for the technical working group to analyze, undertake, and produce some report for consideration of the steering committee, which also makes the final decision. But there is also the secretariat that helps, that is more like the engine that facilitates and coordinates all this work. So what you see on your right here, it's the current HTA strategy for Ghana. I believe there are copies online for those who might want to peruse, but clearly setting out Ghana's bold agenda towards ensuring that health sector decision-making or decisions are actually underpinned by a robust system of priority setting, that includes multiple stakeholders, essentially. So what you see here is a standard treatment guidelines for COVID, which was also undertaken under the auspices of the HTA structures. That is Martha sitting there, right? She gave those messages. So I wanted us to get a clear sense of what the context of all of this work is. And I show this to highlight the process, not for you to go through everything because the slide seems busy. But essentially, this is the HTA architecture process. The steering committee is here, commissioning and giving overall strategic direction for work. The technical working group picking the orders and actually undertaking analysis. The technical working group actually has a lot of academia and research representatives, but also civil society, also the private sector, and has a lot of, different frameworks, including also a legal group there. The secretariat you see here coordinates all these activities. So I just wanted to give you this context. This is the context within which the policy question of what is the cost of COVID-19 vaccination? Well, that came from what is the value for money for COVID-19 vaccination for Ghana? And of course, we had to have discussions and pick those one by one. So the first step really is to understand what the cost of COVID-19 vaccination is. In a few minutes, let me also show you or share with you a few statistics of COVID-19 in Ghana. So as you can see, this is as at October 3, 2021. Ghana had recorded cumulative cases, total cases of a little under 130,000. This is from 12 March 2020, since the onset of COVID, sorry. And out of that, we've had approximately 1,160 deaths to date. You would see on the left the regional distribution of the cases in terms of the country, and then on the right you see the sex distribution of the cases. This slide shows you the sources. I mean the different areas where the different sources where these figures were picked up or the cases were picked up. So from routine surveillance, you have a couple of cases picked up, enhanced contact tracing, international travelers. This is from Ghana's main international airport, which is in Accra. So yeah, you have also positivity rates by surveillance type and that. But the focus really is to help us understand what is happening in Ghana. As of October 4, 2021, Ghana had administered a total of about 2,025,000 doses of COVID-19 vaccine. That represented about 820,000 fully vaccinated individuals. And if you compare that to Ghana's target of 60%, 60% coming to 17.5 million people. This figure gives us a little below 5% of the 60% target. We do know, and I think this group really of health economists, eminent health economists really do know and understand that vaccines save lives. They avert millions, of deaths, annually. They save many lives. And it is important that, we as health economists support the general public health community to promote the work of vaccine. But also we need to interrogate the economic perspective of vaccinations, because for us, society needs to undertake every activity bearing in mind the opportunity costs, right? And ensuring that we minimize the opportunity cost of every activity we undertake. So we need to bring the economics into perspective. That's this work, which estimates the costs of COVID-19 vaccination in Ghana. So this really was the technical focus. As I said, there were other points, other emphasis in the general work, but this particular bit focused on analyzing, the costs of COVID-19 vaccination in Ghana under different scenarios, and I will share those scenarios with you briefly. Now, how did we do this? First, the COVID-19 vaccine implementation, introduction, and deployment costing tool, which is an Excel-based, Microsoft Excel-based tool developed by WHO, UNICEF, and other partners who are playing a key role at the global front of COVID-19 response. This tool is a comprehensive tool that has, very good amount of pre-populated data on each country. Now, pre-populated data coming from different databases, but actually reflecting the country's own, country level data, not average data for low and middle income countries or things like that. But also allowing analysts to change these data and fill them with country-specific data for any decision making. And the tool really supports rapid cost estimation. As you can tell, when I was told this on a Thursday and was asked to report on Sunday, I didn't do that. But there isn't any field-based country costing study that could give us reports in such a short time. But with the civic tool, we managed to bring people together to handle this in quite a good time. So the tool aligns with other tools, including the VRAT, which is the introduction readiness assessment tool, and some other tools, the framework by the WHO SAGE and others, and makes room to align also very well with every country's national vaccine deployment plan. This is a short snapshot of what a tool looks like on the first sheet. But how did we go about it in Ghana? Bear in mind that it was virtually impossible to design and undertake, regular costing exercise, which would have necessitated ethics submission, which would take a couple of months, and then recruiting people and all that. We decided to use a different approach. What did we do? We mobilized a core group of people, which is essentially an extension of the technical working group of the ministry's health technology assessment structure. But then the extension brings in other people from the National Immunization Technical Advisory Group. We had a chair and a couple of members there. We had, past EPI program managers. We had a current EPI, not just the manager, but a couple of other people from the EPI. We had a National Health Insurance Authority, which has an interest in this as Ghana's foremost health financing agency. We had other groups, including PATH, and many others, really, the ministry itself and Ghana Health Service, who played a role in the response to COVID. And these meetings were actually facilitated by the TWG and the School of Public Health University of Ghana. So these were more or less small analytical meetings, 2-day meetings actually, to agree, go into the civic tool one by one, parameter by parameter, sheet by sheet, go through everything, interrogate what pre-populated data already is there, and then actually change quite a bit of those data to suit Ghana's interests. The good thing about this approach is that a couple of the data required that we get expert opinions, and because we had past EPI managers and other epidemiologists around and health systems experts, it was quite easy to discuss and collectively agree on parameters. So after these workshops, a smaller group made up of the technical and my analytical team, and here I need to really point out the work done by the postdocs, Richmond Owusu and Godwin Gobi. We spent quite a number of days sitting and analyzing based on the inputs that had come. After that process, I'll come to that bit a bit, but after that process, we actually undertook a validation meeting. Let me come back to this slide briefly, but I wanted to highlight this meeting. And that validation meeting really was bringing in the HTA steering committee, this time also extended, because we had other people present in that meeting, like a WHO country rep. We had a lead, of the presidential COVID-19 task force. We also had a presidential advisor on health, alongside many other officials to really interrogate what we've done. And there were many very useful comments in terms of which parameters made sense, which parameters we needed to really look at, particularly the price of vaccines at the time, because it had become a contentious issue. So we had that meeting and then went back as a smaller group to work on some of the scenarios. Then the final phase involved meeting a more technical immunization implementation team, which comprised EPI and others, over a couple of days to really, and that coincided with a review of the NDVP, because at the time, the initial plan did not incorporate Pfizer, which required ultra cold chain, but this new plan did. So this is exactly how we went about this. And I think that looking back, that probably was a very useful exercise for Ghana. And so, in terms of the inputs, the civic had a lot of inputs that we had to deliberate and decide which were relevant for the case of Ghana. So the civic generally had 4 modules or implementation modalities. One had, vaccination using fixed sites with cold storage. We also had campaigns at fixed sites with no cold storage. We had residential institutions, which were mainly elderly residential institutions by definition, but could also include other residential institutions. And we also had the outreach and mobile sites. Now, in Ghana's case, collectively, the group agreed that we needed to hold off the residential institutions because really, Ghana doesn't have, especially elderly and other residential institutions, even though there were prisons. I think we considered them as a part of one of the other 3 modalities. So these were the scenarios that we analyzed, and looking at all the vaccines available to the country, most of them had been approved by the National Drug Agency. Others were on the verge of being approved, so we included all of them. So we had AstraZeneca, Sputnik V, the Moderna, Pfizer, and J&J. These were the vaccines, that were considered. And the different scenarios related to, so scenario 1 related to really how do we apportion the different vaccines and ensure that each vaccine, was considered. At the time this was being done, AstraZeneca was the only vaccine in the country and has started, being deployed. So we apportioned 40% for scenario 1 and then 10% for the other scenarios. And J&J, because, there were credible information. There was credible information from all the sources that we're going to get, the country was going to get a very good amount of J&J. But then we had other scenarios, that changed these different ones. Scenario 3, we decided to just give each of them an equal chance, 20% across the board. The second bit of it related to the time frame of immunization. For those of you who had reviewed Ghana's first NDVP, it was quite ambitious, assuming that we would vaccinate 60% of the population by end of 2021. And this H1 represents one half. Each H represents one half of the year. So for 2021, the first half, and then the second half. And then as we discussed this, things began to unfold that, global supply constraints and some other ways. So we really had to extend this timeline and include 2 other scenarios that considered that Ghana was only going to be able to immunize the 60% by the end of second half 2022, even though the civic tool actually makes room for 3 years. And you would understand because we're operating with a not very academic, very programmatic, but also under very not very political, but we had to work with the different agencies to understand what was happening and what could happen. So we really had to restrict this analysis to 2 years. So these were the analysis. The prices we used were from UNICEF's market dashboard. I think a search for Sputnik V, which at the time we knew that the price for Ghana would be something around $19 per dose. These were per dose prices. So these were the scenarios. This figure you see presents the different scenarios we put in there to show, how we're going to reach the 70.5 population. And remember, we're dealing with up to half 2. Civic decides to extend that for us, but we are focusing on up to half 2 of 2022. So these figures are cumulative. These are the populations, from H1 and then moving to 11 million people by the end of the year, and then to 14 million, and then to 60 million by the end of period 2. What did we find? I tried to present this slide in a better way. Probably that's a figure, but it was going to be more complicated. So let me try to explain what this means. So for each of those scenarios I give, remember a combination of what percentage of which vaccine was included, and then the timeline, over the timeline. So this first column shows that per person who is fully immunized, the cost for scenario 1 would be, $20 this is per person, not per dose. Between $20 and $26 per person who is fully immunized, whether it's 1 dose or it's 2 doses, 2 dose vaccines. But this is also a combination of vaccines. And then isolating, not accounting for the vaccine price. This is more of the delivery costs, between not so much difference, about $4.5 or $4.6 per dose. Per person, sorry. That excludes the vaccines, including vaccine per dose this time, between $10.5 to $13, depending on the scenario we are dealing with. And then, of course, excluding vaccines, also $2.2 to $2.3 per dose, excluding vaccines. And here, I am aware that, there have been a few rates of, delivery cost per dose out there, some ranging from below $1. But yeah, let me say that even though the civic pre-populate things, this is more like collecting data, because for those of you who know, the API has a standard rate for different vaccination programs. And so we used, for instance, per diems or transport costs that the EPI uses for its standard, the routine immunization process, which has been used over a couple of years. So some of those figures were really not assumptions. They were actually what the EPI uses. So it's important to put that in context. And I think that a couple of studies are coming out from other countries. So we see how the delivery cost gets to. So in total, for the different halves, we have them here, but most importantly, for the 2-year period, for all these vaccines, combination of all these vaccines, the total cost of COVID-19 vaccination for Ghana ranges between let's say 350 million US dollars to about a little under 450 million US dollars. This amount, in comparison, let me actually pick the per fully immunized person. In comparison to the per capita health spending, the cost per fully immunized person ranges from between 27 to 34% of the per capita health spending, and the per capita health spending is annual. Or, if we use the GDP per capita per person, which is per person, this would be all a little under 1% of the GDP per capita. In terms of cost drivers, of course, the vaccine doses and the various supplies that accompany the vaccine itself make up the highest of these costs, between 78 to 83%, followed by human resource. Training, supervision, compensation. And let me state here, this is not actually payment for human resource, because Ghana does not pay people. When we use the regular health workers, community health workers, this is only, say, transportation costs or some allowances that they are giving, but not salaries, because people are already paid salaries. So these, amount to about 8 to 10% of the total costs. And then we also have the cold chain. As I mentioned, initially the ultra cold chain vaccines requiring ultra cold chain were not considered, but then they were considered, especially Pfizer. And Ghana had very little ultra cold chain facilities, so Ghana had to, we had to account for the purchase of these vaccines. Plus, at the time, some new districts had been set up, which would then require, infrastructure built, not buildings, but the cold chain and other infrastructure to support vaccination in those districts. So this was included, and that moved the cold chain cost to about 4%, slightly. All other costs, were very minimum. And these include vaccine safety surveillance, demand generation and communication, and data management, monitoring, evaluation, among others. How does vaccination affect workforce? Because we know that one of the biggest challenges for low and middle income countries is that we already don't have enough health workforce. So COVID-19 comes in and can actually displace or move away some of the health workforce from existing services. And that has been a concern of many people. So how exactly does do we anticipate this happening in terms of COVID-19 vaccination? The upper part of this slide, refers to non-full-time equivalents, while the lower part refers to the full-time equivalent, assuming that we were dealing with full people's complete time. Let me focus on so these are essentially numbers for the different scenarios. The numbers, non-FTEs of HR that will be required to implement the 60% vaccination. And then in terms of FTEs, the numbers of people that will be required. Then we have the total vaccinated days here on this row. And this is the nice thing about the Civic. It generates this information for you. So we are also able to assess what the impact of vaccination would be on the health workforce. And for the full-time equivalents, we're going to require about 13.5% under scenario 1 of those who are already, full-time people. And this would mainly be existing health workforce, particularly the community health workers and those that are at that level, the primary healthcare level that deliver vaccinations. So between 9 and 13% of that health workforce to undertake this activity. What lessons have we learned from Ghana's experience that we would like to share with this audience and any other groups? The first thing from Ghana's experience is that, in fact, the use of the civic or the vaccination tool, or the vaccination tool in particular, let me talk about that because that's what we used, is better being country-owned and country-led. Why did I say that? The process requires, very broad consultations with key stakeholders across the board, from the Ministry of Health, from the Ghana Health Service, from the civil society, from the private sector, but actually from different agencies within government machinery. And we benefited because we had the Ministry of Health convening power to bring all these stakeholders together. And we realized that that really helped us because, if you had a consultant who had to go around, who one doesn't have the convening power and has to go around to people one by one, I wonder how much of people's times we would have been able to get, given that this was all happening in a very busy time when everyone was, especially the API, they were moving, to receive vaccines, to move them to the field and supervise and do all that. But because this was country owned, we had these people sit and contribute to this work. So we think that is very important. And that facilitates the work. The other thing relates to capacity. The use of consultants is very good, but COVID-19 is here. We don't know when or how long it will stay with us and when it goes back. Even if it does, there are lessons from COVID-19 that we will need for routine immunizations and some other work. And I think that ensuring that there is enough local capacity or national level capacity from the Ministry of Health, from the API, from academia where the capacity does not exist to actually drive this work makes it more sustainable rather than using consultants. Even when consultants are used, this should be within the context of capacity strengthening to ensure that the people who would be there all the time are able to do this. And actually, how do we integrate this in the routine services? I think this will be very helpful. Of course, this is an iterative process. And so, there has to be repetitions as the work goes on. Data quality is very important because it can throw your estimates upward. And I'm not saying our estimates are, what it is. Of course, we all know that in costing, our interest is in the relevant costs. And so some range of those costs will be helpful. The civic, as I said already, the tool is very comprehensive. However, a major challenge using that tool is that multiple versions keep coming up. And those of you who have seen the tool, it's a bulky tool. So if there's a version that does not allow you to sync the previous work you've done, it means you have to go over and enter all that again. That can actually discourage national people from going back to that tool. And I do not know, this happened a while back. Maybe there are versions that help us to sync so that you can easily get all the data you have in that new version. If not, I think this is something that the partners will need to really consider if you want to integrate this into the routine implementation. It is also very difficult, as you've seen. We consider different vaccine types, but it's difficult for us to generate output for what the final cost would be for one particular vaccine type. Except then we have to assume that we are using only one vaccine, and we go all over entering the information and for everything, and we do that a couple of times to see what it would look like. Even though in reality, I don't think any country uses just one vaccine. So that is also something that we may need to look at. I am keen, particularly on my capacity, my role at Africa CDC, that is overseeing a lot of this work in many countries. I'm actually keen and looking forward to many countries using this tool, or actually using regular micro costing and other costing approaches to estimate the costs of COVID-19 vaccination, then we can have a better understanding of what the real delivery costs, incremental delivery costs of COVID-19 vaccinations across countries really look like. So I know that many of you are leading different pieces of work, and I really am keen to see what the output will be. So I think I would pause on this note, and I'm looking forward to engaging, the audience after this. Over to you, Ryoko.
All right. Thank you so much for your wonderful presentation. Now we are going to start taking the questions. If you can raise hands in the reaction tab, or you can write in the chat, I will start taking one by one. I see one in the chat already from Amrit. His question is the total cost shown in table 3 is by vaccine introduction and or vaccine deployments? It will be great to see the cost differentiated by introduction and deployment. Justice, if we have any comments on that.
Yes, actually, this is for both. This is for introduction and deployment. And we did not at the time, because I think the policy question we're seeking to address was, what was it going to cost Ghana to introduce and deploy, right? But I think your point is noted, and yeah, your point is noted. Over.
Okay. If anyone has any question, please raise hands or write comments. I'm trying to see, today we have like 70 people, so we're trying to see. I don't see any people raising hands. Hold on. Oh, here, Logan, you have comments.
Yeah, no, thanks so much for that wonderful presentation. And it's really useful to see kind of work that's going on in countries brought to this SIG group. I think it really benefits us all to see kind of real life experiences and how countries also are dealing with and handling the tools that are being promoted and developed kind of more globally. My question was really around kind of the interaction that you've had with policymakers as to the results. What was their reaction to the findings? And to your knowledge, have any of these findings factored into budgeting or decision making? We so often do costing studies and say that they're useful for planning and budgeting. But the evidence on that is pretty thin. So I'm really interested and curious to hear from you about the experience with this. I'll stop there.
May I, Ryoko?
Yes, please.
Yeah, no, I think this is very important. And the use of findings such as this actually starts from the policy question, right? Who requests this work? And I think for us, that was very important. This came from the ministry and from the minister and the NITAC. With that in mind, I think one of the very useful parts of this exercise for us was that validation meeting we held. Because as you can see, the COVID-19 response is not just the Ministry of Health. There are task groups, some at the presidency at various levels. And some are taking decisions beyond the Ministry of Health. So how do we bring all of this on board? That meeting really brought all these people on board to deliberate on what the questions were. And one of the key things, policymakers told us was that, yeah, by the time you are presenting these results, we think, now the cost is fine. We know the cost. They made very useful inputs that make us go back to change. But then the additional question is, can we move this into some form of cost effectiveness or cost benefit or whatever it is, which is the other part that the technical group is going into. Now, we have shared these findings to the different stakeholder groups in meetings, but also in form of a report. We know that the EPI, the NITAG, and the other stakeholders that actually own and drive, together with the other steering groups, that drive the NDVP and the process, have this. And I think one of the useful things we will need to do will be to go back and see to what extent they have actually incorporated this. But I think this was a useful exercise because we also presented this to the partners in Ghana. And some of the partners were, trying to support the country in many ways. So I cannot say that this has been used, but certainly the government agencies that were driving this have this. And I would expect that it's actually being used in budgeting of the revised NDVP, and certainly also gone into supporting government's decision in handling vaccines and vaccinations going forward. But it's something we have to get back and check to what extent exactly that has happened. Over.
Thank you, Justice. So I see next question from Tuoyo. Tuoyo, if you can speak up.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Justice. I confess that I joined a little late. Some of the problems of having 5 Zoom meetings at the same time. But I joined in at the point where you were describing the cost drivers, and I noticed that the component for sensitization awareness was very, very minimal. In the light of the realities of vaccine hesitancy across our countries, I wonder whether that was a real cost, describing how much was spent, or that the program itself has not taken this as an important component of their work and therefore devoted sufficient resources to it, and what type of recommendations that you've made now to the colleagues in the Ministry of Health. Over.
Yeah, thank you very much, Toyo, and I salute you. I think that does this cost of sensitization represent the actual societal costs to sensitization as part of this? I would say no. This is what is being spent from Ghana. And I think the benefit of this is that, look, the media in Ghana are doing an excellent job. So the media, civil society, religious groups, the private sector, and many other groups are shouldering a chunk of the cost of sensitizing the public, about vaccine hesitancy. Open in Ghana has how many radio stations? Hundreds. Open any of them during this period, you see people talk about this. At churches, I remember in my church, every Sunday, someone will stand up to educate people 5 minutes, 10 minutes on how to handle this. So I think that a lot of the cost of these, the real cost of these activities really are borne by the non-government sector. In which case the government itself did not really have to allocate a lot. The government allocates to its agencies that still give out information and sensitize people and things like that. But I think it might be quite difficult to capture all the other costs, particularly noting that a lot of these costs are borne by a very wide range of groups. I think it will be quite interesting. Maybe someone is listening on the different research work to really look at what the actual cost in terms of sensitization from the non-government sector would look like. Thank you.
Thank you, Justice. Farhad, I just saw the message from Farhad, but he's also raising his hand, so you can go ahead and ask questions.
Hi, thank you so much for the very valuable presentation. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I can hear you, yes.
Yes, thank you. What I wanted to ask is the role of cost information in resource allocation decisions in Ghana. Whether this information is mainly used by the international community and also those supports Ghana by the international aid, or the government of Ghana as well values the cost information, because usually I'm from Afghanistan, and unfortunately, currently there is a big devastation in the country that nothing works there. So cost information probably is one of the least of the attention of the authorities there. Now, international community is the only contributor to the health sector of Afghanistan. In Ghana, what I wanted to ask is, the weight the policymakers give to the cost information, and also at the same time, the resource, there has been some resource displacement as well during the COVID-19, because certainly by the NHS Ghana, there is some allocation for the overall, health services that is being provided to the people. So in the case of, how I should say that, like, due to the COVID-19 probably, or the fear of COVID-19, most of the consumers didn't attend the health facilities. So that resources has remained idle. So what about those resources that has been displaced, whether those resources has been used effectively or efficiently then for responding the COVID-19 or not? Thank you.
Yeah, I think I get your question, Fahad, and thank you very much for bringing that up. There's a limit to what we can do. We know that economic analysis has some limits. And I have not been in the health economic space for long. I've only been here 12 to 15 years. But certainly I have seen a move, though it's been a gradual move from, initially it was mainly development partners who were commissioning studies on costs and cost effectiveness of different activities, mainly development partners. But I have seen a gradual shift somehow to government agencies. A typical example is this particular work. So as I said, this work was not commissioned by any development partner. It was not commissioned by any donor. It was actually commissioned by the Ministry of Health. And this is because the ministry saw the NDVP, the vaccination deployment plan, and questions came up about how much would it cost the country to implement this. So clearly this went to address a local, well, I like to say national need or question. And I think that COVID-19 has taught us a lot of lessons, because people have the impression that most funding for COVID-19 has been from donors. Well, to some extent that is true. But I think that if you look at the entire response and not just look at vaccine doses, countries are putting in a lot, especially in Ghana, the private sector and other non-government partners and government partners are putting in a lot. So the issue of costs become very relevant if someone has to pay from pocket, right? And I think that as far as the politics is concerned, I can say very little on that because I'm a health economist. The political economy is important, but you are dealing with a situation where people do not really want to worry about the costs. They want to ensure that the vaccine doses are available, not just in the ministry, but they get it in the remotest place, that I'm able to get a vaccine. And so no matter how much you put in there, people are really looking forward to it. At the same time, those who follow the news in Ghana, there were issues about how much the government has agreed to pay for Sputnik V vaccine, which is above the market price, and things like that, But, putting too much money into that versus not getting the doses and trying to ensure that your people actually have the dose is very important. So there's a lot of discussion in the in the media and among the general population about how much is going to this and whether we are getting the services we require. People want to get everything. And for us as economists, it's important that we undertake such analysis vis-a-vis what the efficiency of allocating these resources is. Do I have a perfect answer for this? I don't, because that will require some broader work. This was in the context of estimating what the vaccine cost would really look like. And I think broader work around cost effectiveness and others could try to address the relative efficiency of putting the money into vaccination versus putting it elsewhere. But I think this is very important. I really appreciate your question, Fahad. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Justice.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Farah. So there are several questions waiting. First one is Harvey, coming from Harvey. He directly asked me questions. So I'm gonna read it out to you, followed by Uzochukwu. I'm coming to you after that. So Harvey's question, there are two questions. One, are there enough refrigerators for the entire country? Is there enough grid powers to run refrigerators? That's first question. The second question is, do you use Logistimo and DHIS2 for the data? Those are the two from Harvey. If you can answer.
Sorry, Rico, I didn't hear the first part. Is there enough power to
run the refrigerators?
You mean the reference rates?
The refrigerators, with the cold chain, the refrigerator to stock the vaccine.
Oh yeah, okay. So
yes.
You're talking about electrical power.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think Ghana does have. Well, for information, Ghana has. Well, we have our own electrical issues, but they are not really related to power generation as they are to the distribution. Ghana has enough power to supply many West African countries, but usually the distribution becomes a problem. But I think that the policymakers actually prioritize, including the power generation agencies. I think in times like this, they prioritize. Plus the cold chain. So these ultra cold chain, I think, would be at centers, areas where power is not really a problem, where, so that policymakers will find out how to reach other areas that do not have power. So if you ask me, I think the country has power to run this, and that's not to say we have power all the time, but at least to ensure that this works.
All right, thanks. I think he also asked about the data, whether you use Logistimo and DHIS2 for the data. Was the second? No,
we did not use DHIS2 or Logistimo. We used different data sources. And I think some of that data are available with the API, others from other data sources populated by the Civic tool. I'm not sure how the DHIS2, of course, DHIS2 has data from the community, from the hospitals, but I'm not sure how exactly that comes to play in this, but we did not use that.
All right, thank you. Now moving on to the next question from Uzochukwu. So his comment, well done, Professor. What are the implications of the Ghana results to the following: equity and access, vaccine hesitancy, budget impact, implementation issues, including impacts on rollout plans, potential impacts of future vaccine waning, etc. If you have comments.
Thank you very much, BSc. Most of the issues you outlined, well, okay, were not necessarily addressed by our study. But if you pick out the budget impact, like I said, ours is to estimate the costs, and that naturally comes with the budget impact, which information we give to the policymaker. How does that impact your existing budget or your future budget organization? But issues about equity and access, vaccine hesitancy and implementation issues are addressed by different components of the national plan. I also do know other researchers, the ministry, so actually the HTA group is working with some other teams to look at issues around vaccine hesitancy. But I think it will be important, and I agree the issues you listed are important to really look at them. Though I know that some other groups within the national response are addressing implementation of the rollout and things like that. Over.
All right, thank you. So there are several questions asking about if you can share the report with the audience later, probably that would be great. I see two comments about that. Justice, I don't know if that's possible.
Yeah, so a manuscript has been submitted. I don't know if this will be available on the preprint, but I'll check that and I can share the link if available.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. So the next question will be from Steve. Steve, if you can speak up.
Hi, thanks very much, Professor Novignon. This is great to hear this presentation, and I also want to congratulate you on having the highest number of participants of any of our webinars yet, where I think we peaked at 76. So that's fantastic.
I see.
You're a huge draw. I guess my question is, one of the things I think maybe is unique about Ghana is, or somewhat unique about Ghana, is that you have an HTA agency in place. And I'm wondering, and you are one of the first countries to use the civic tool, and I'm wondering if having that infrastructure in place of the HTA agency, to what extent that's an advantage in terms of being able to rapidly respond and use a tool like Civic to do a cost analysis to support policy work. Over.
Yeah, absolutely, Steve. I think that you remember the conversation I shared. That is because there's actually a WhatsApp platform that, for the HTA group. And I think the minister himself is aware of the existence of HTA because he chairs the steering committee. To even know that, yes, I have this this plan, but can I get the costs? So I think absolutely that was a key, reason for this work to, I mean, if you look at the number of probably hours that the request got to us, if there weren't a relationship, a platform where the ministry and agencies already have a relationship with academia, I don't think this would have come up. So I think that HTA really becomes a very useful platform to drive this. And I don't know what the experience of other countries is, but I do think that HTA, absolutely, we wouldn't have gotten this far without HTA. People are already asking for cost effectiveness and when is the report coming out? And this is because we have a structure that people understand exists and can help in prioritizing decisions.
All right, thank you. So I think we're gonna have like 2 minutes left, and I see one comment from, I think, Ketevan. So his question is, do these cost estimates include shared costs as well? If yes, how the allocation of shared costs, like overhead costs, have been done?
Yeah, so yes, it includes shared costs, but there are different types of costs. So the allocation mechanism for each of them is different. If you pick delivery, you pick transports, you pick even the cold chain and some other facilities. I mean, it's difficult for me to explain how one particular shared cost was used, but there are different types of shared costs. And as you know, each of them is used differently. Even the HR, because the HR are used, for this COVID-19, it was assumed that people were going to move in there. But going forward, I mean, people also deliver other vaccines. So how do we share their costs? And I'm sure the report might provide some response to this, but absolutely there are different shared costs with different allocation mechanisms just for them.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Novignon. It was great. I think time has come, and thank you for all the audience to show up today. And if any paper will be available later, we're gonna share, and have a good day.
Thank you. Thank you, audience. Thank you, organizers.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Steve.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you indeed.
Bye.